Serious people who were fine 1 minute, then woke up in the hospital. What happened? Story 1. Attention. Serious tag notice jokes, puns, and off-topic comments are not permitted in any comment, parent or child. Parent comments that aren't from the target group will be removed, along with their child replies. Report comments that violate these rules. Posts that have few relevant answers within the first hour, and posts that are not appropriate for the serious tag will be removed. Consider doing an AMA request instead. Thanks for your cooperation and enjoy the discussion. I am a bot, and this action was performed automatically. Please contact the moderators of this subreddit message compose. Tor AskReddit if you have any questions or concerns. Story 2. When I was around 8 or 9, my parents went to have dinner at a fancy restaurant. My younger brother was at a friend's house and I had a babysitter. When I finally fell asleep I woke up in an ambulance. Turns out my babysitter overdosed me with pills so I wouldn't wake up whilst she threw a party at my house. She gave me so many I passed out and had a reaction. Story 3. I was in elementary school. I stayed home because I had a light fever one day. I took a nap and woke up 3 days later in the hospital with no feeling in my legs. I had contracted viral meningitis, which had cut off the nerves to my lower body. I was bedridden for 3 weeks and spent several more weeks in physical therapy relearning how to walk. The horrors I endured during my stay were traumatic enough, but I still feel lucky. In high school, a fellow classmate had contracted bacterial meningitis. He died 2 days later. Story 4. On a business trip in Texas, me and 2 coworkers were driving to work. I was in the back passenger seat, woke up in an ambulance, got hit by a Sprinter van at 50 miles per hour and slammed into a guardrail according to the police report. I don't remember any of it. Broke 7 ribs, collarbone, concussion, and fractured 2 bones in my neck. Took like 7 months to recover, but my neck and shoulder still bother me daily. Story 5. I had a severe asthma attack to the point my entire throat closed up. I turned blue and was lying on the kitchen floor. Woke up in my granddad's car with a straw in my throat and him banging on my back. Woke up again in the hospital. I was about 7. Story 6. I don't know if absolutely plastered counts as being fine 1 minute, but yeah, I remember being shit-faced sitting on a jungle gym in a park and then waking up the next morning in a hospital with an foreign catheter. Apparently I was found in a coma and had multiple organs shutting down. If I hadn't received medical help I would have died. Am now 3 years sober. Story 7. My girlfriend had a thyroid-related heart attack, where she was revived and put into a medically induced coma for like 2 weeks, and took her another 2 weeks to come out of it. Then she had to go to inpatient physical therapy for a bit. Talking to her after she woke up, I couldn't help but be astounded how much it with her memory. It was like she remembered events, people, things and places, but any concept of time went out the window. For example, she thought she was living at her ex-husband's mom's house, driving a car she had before we met, working at her current job, and knew we were dating. And of course, as those were all simultaneously impossible, she was having a lot of trouble figuring out what was right, and what wasn't. Story 8. Was on the way to work on my bike. Last thing I remember is turning out of the driveway. Woke up 5 days later in a neurotrauma unit with 11 broken ribs, a shattered clavicle, a punctured lung, 8 stitches on my foot, 6 behind my ear, and permanent nerve damage. I have no recollection to this day of what happened. From the evidence, I'm pretty sure I was run over. There was also blood on my helmet visor from the wound behind the ear. I've had some parts filled in for me. The first hospital they took me to couldn't give me strong painkillers and risked putting me under because they didn't know what damage my skull had taken. CT scans were required. Took 4 hours for me to get to a hospital with a CT machine, 4 hours with a punctured lung. There's no video of the incident. It happened conveniently in an unsurveilled spot between 2 video cameras. Bystanders were of no help at least. My brother and dad didn't collect any information from them that they've shared with me. I suspected for some time that my then girlfriend with whom I'd recently broken up had tried to have me taken out. While I was under, she turned up at the hospital and convinced my family that I'd tried to kill myself, in a bike accident, while wearing a helmet, in 6 p.m. rush hour traffic, half a mile from my apartment, where my dad was sitting. On the 10th floor, my brother and my dad believe her. They still think I remember exactly what happened but won't tell them because I'm embarrassed to admit I was suicidal. The real irony, I never had suicidal thoughts until after I recovered and realized my own family chooses to believe an outsider over me. They still do. This is what betrayal is. Took years to move past those thoughts. Story 9. Ironically similar to another comment, I was also riding my bicycle to work when I got hit by a drunk driver going 45 miles per hour head-on. I would have been going about 20 miles per hour myself. I have no memory of being hit. I had a lot of injuries being such a traumatic impact. Avulsion fracture to tibia, bruised lung, moderate brain injury, grade 45 lacerated spleen almost fatal, broken left femur, 2 vertebrae with compression fractures, broken left scapula, broken left clavicle, broken left second rib, and various scrapes, the worst being 6 by 1, 5 by 1 inches. I've mostly recovered, but my left leg can't be walked on really. My left arm will never be what it was. The worst scrape was on top of the shoulder so that muscle is just gone. She was drunk, speeding in the wrong side of the road. She tried claiming my lights were off, but they were still on at the scene. I don't know how I managed to survive. It was a collision of a total of 65 miles per hour. I wasn't even supposed to work that day either. Now the pain, my heavens, does that hurt. The first vivid memory I have was when they set my femur into place out in traction. Without any kind of pain meds, I had lost so much blood I couldn't handle any painkillers at all. After that, once adrenaline wore off, the pain was excruciating. It felt like I was breaking a new bone with every breath with all the injuries I had. The pharmacy had some issue and I only got an opioid twice in line 4 or 5 hours. They only worked for like 20 to 30 minutes. Never really complained about it. No point, it is what it is. The driver complained about more the first 10 minutes than I have in 10 months, cussing and screaming at me while I was laying there dying. Story 10. I was at work having a normal day. I went to the toilet and could not get off the floor because I was doubled over in pain. I somehow managed to stagger out to where my colleagues were, and they called me an ambulance. Got to hospital and had all my clothes and belongings shoved in a bag and was rushed into emergency surgery for a ruptured ectopic pregnancy. Story 11. I had a friend over for a puppy play date and I remember looking at the clock and thinking I needed to pack for a road trip because we were going to visit my fiancé family. The next second I was being told to hold very still and I was having some sort of scan done. That nurse was amazing because she managed to keep me calm the whole time. We were at a stoplight and rear-ended by a distracted driver. I completely lost 14 hours. I cannot remember them at all, just a complete black hole. The worst memory loss is that I have very foggy memories from about 2 months before the accident. It feels like you're trying to remember a dream. Like you know something happened, but have no concrete memories. This time period includes my fiancé proposing to me and I hate so much that I cannot remember it. Finally, the entire school year before that I am a teacher seems like a really long time ago. Like if I try really hard I can have concrete memories, but it is like trying to remember a birthday party from 20 years ago. Everything before that is still fine and present. That was 4 years ago and I still struggle with my memory. Watching the dashcam footage is surreal because I know that is me, and I was awake and talking, but no matter how hard I try I cannot remember it. Please do not text and drive, it is not worth the risk. The young man that hit us made a simple decision that completely changed my life and I will probably struggle for the rest of my life because he was looking at his phone. Edit to add some humorous details. I was having Groundhog Day every minute or so, and I would generally ask the same questions in the same order. Obviously I would ask what happened, then how did I get here, my fiancé, and the nurses would make up new answers every time. Apparently the one that got the biggest reaction is that I got there by a rocket ship, haha. Story 12. Small bowel obstruction. My neighbor saved me. I went to bed perfectly fine. Then apparently I was puking blood and we had massive gaps under our front doors, like you could stick your hand under it, and they were all studio apartments. My neighbor walked by my unit walking into hers and said she heard me gurgling and she was pounding on the door and I wasn't responding. She kicked it in, brought me to the hospital downtown, 2 blocks away, and I woke up 2 weeks later. Nothing obvious caused it and I lost 110 pounds in 2 weeks. This happened 4 years ago. I've gained about 50 pounds back, but today I am healthy and no longer wake up in fear. It is extremely overwhelming to go to bed, ready to wake up for class the next day, and instead wake up 2 weeks later, having lost over half of your body weight. I think it's fair to say it's a little traumatizing to wake up in an ICU. Story 13. I was walking to a birthday party. Next thing I knew, I woke up in an ambulance. I had been struck over the head and was knocked unconscious. I never found out who it was, or what they wanted. They didn't take anything from me. Story 14. I was watching Pocahontas in a blanket fort with my stuffed animals. Home from preschool because I had pink eye. The next thing I knew, over a week had passed. I was surrounded by doctors, who were begging me to open up my mouth. My jaw was locked shut, and I had bacterial meningitis. My parents were there weeping, and my dad told me if I opened my mouth for the doctors he would buy me a Barbie Jeep. I tried, it was impossible. Days later I tried again, and part of my tongue fell out. I had bit it off during a seizure. Everyone was yelling, and I looked at my dad and said, "Where's my Barbie Jeep?" I have almost no memories from the time of my life, but the promise my dad made me was on my mind in every memory I have. My parents were told I would never be 100 again and I would likely have severe brain damage permanently. It was excruciatingly painful to move and do things for a while, but my dad kept reminding me that I could drive my Jeep if I kept at it. I remember watching him put it together, but I wasn't strong enough to drive it. My personality was gone, but I just didn't care. I barely spoke for months, and had to learn how to read write draw again. Fast forward, I finished high school early and I have 0 health issues now. I genuinely believe my parents are to thank. The brain can heal really well, but they found a way to motivate me to keep healing constantly. Story 15. My mom, my brother, and I were in the family room chatting. I was maybe 8 at the time, my brother 13. My mom asked us if we'd like some of the Danish chocolate the exchange student we hosted for a few weeks gave us as a parting gift. Excited, I raced to the kitchen to beat my brother there. I tripped over a stool someone left out, let's be honest. Probably me. I fell over it and hit my head on the edge of the kitchen counter. From there I blacked out. Now, this wasn't my first head injury and certainly not my last, so I barely recall waking up at the ER at the hospital. I remember my body feeling extremely heavy and my head pounding like nothing ever before or since. Apparently I scrambled my memories up even more than one of my first head injuries. 14 stitches to sew me back up and one sort of boring summer inside with a TV. Never did get that chocolate edit a word. Story 16. 1 month short of my 14th birthday I was riding my bicycle home from school. 1 second I was at the top of a steep hill, and on the wrong side of the road. The next second I was standing in the middle of the street. I reasoned I must have fallen off of my bike, it was lying nearby, so I picked it up and tried to get back on. For some reason the pedals wouldn't move. At this time a bunch of people had come up to me, and they were all freaking out. I was confused at first as to why I was surrounded by hysterical adults until I happened to look down. That was when I finally noticed all of the blood pouring out of my face. So I let them guide me off of the street while an ambulance was called for me. I spent the while ambulance ride asking if I was going to get a shot. The EMTs kept giving me evasive answers, so I kept asking. I still don't remember what happened, but hey, race what I've pieced together over the years. While riding on the wrong side of the road, I passed in front of a stopped car. The driver wanted to turn right, so she was looking to her left to spot a gap in traffic. When she saw one, she pulled out, not realizing I was approaching from her right. She barely knocked me off of my bicycle, but I was going over 20 miles per hour because of the hill I just went down. I hit the asphalt face first with no helmet. The skin on the left side of my forehead was completely torn off and had to be regrown. Story 17 was taking the bus home from my mom's place. I asked the bus driver to stop at the house, as it was just next to the road and I forgot a thing. I ran across the road, got hit by a car, they found me in a decorticate posturing, a few days 8 in medically induced coma. I was constantly spitting at the breathing tube attempting to spit it out. Didn't appreciate that thing in my throat. I had a weird dream of a snake that had attached bit me in the mouth. At some point I got tired of the situation. I fought the snake. I eventually won and tore the snake away from my mouth, removing my own breathing tube. I looked at it dancing in my hand and I threw it across the room to kill it. My family got all the diagnosis possible. Permanent brain damage. Unable to decide which side I wished to drool on. Forever living in a wheelchair. About 20 days after the accident I went home and bicycled a trip. Left the hospital after 28 days. During the entire venture I was flying high on morphine. During my detox routine, I told the nurses I had a weird experience with a photograph on the wall. It was flowing in out, having waves as an ocean, a 2D image became 3D, and doing other trippy things. Today, I'm living with a 10 disability condition. Cost me my dream of software development. Story 18 COVID pneumonia. Woke up, took a, eyesight started going black, lost all vision, then slowly lost all hearing. Woke up to 10L oxygen in a hospital and was there through Christmas and New Year's. Was not fun at all. Had very low lung capacity for 5 months of lung rehabilitation. Story 19 hit by a van. Woke up about a month later. Edit my last memory before waking up is my 4th period art class in high school, so it completely erased the last half of the day before and the entire morning of the accident itself. Story 20 my little sister went into DKA diabetic ketoacidosis a long time ago now, and in her description it was like blink sleep, like when you go to bed and feel like you've only just blinked and woken up hours later, except in this case, she fell asleep at home and woke up a week later in the hospital. Story 21 I had just finished 2-a-day high school football practice in 100 heat, because our health and safety didn't matter, only winning, so I got home and my friend asks if I want to smoke a little weed with him. I shower, pour Gatorade in a huge cup of ice and feel refreshed. Took 2 hits off the blunt and a big chug of my ice-cold Gatorade and only remember waking up in a pool of my own sweat on a hospital bed. I had a heat stroke, even more than an hour after I stopped practice and took a cool shower. The nurse said I may have sent my body into shock if my core temperature was still high, and I took a large gulp of the extremely cold Gatorade. Story 22 I was maybe 16. I had asked my mom if we could go look at puppies at a pet store. 'Cause man do I love dogs. There were a lot of really cute dogs, but after being inside for a minute, I felt off, not like something is extremely wrong, just sorta off. At this point I figured I was having an asthma attack, and since my rescue inhaler was in the car, went to go sit down and use it. My mom came out a minute later and started driving me to the hospital. BC my breathing wasn't getting better. Woke up 3 days later in a hospital bed, with my mom and dad sobbing next to me. Apparently I had a severe allergic reaction. My throat had closed almost completely. The DR that appeared soon after me waking said that I was extremely lucky, and gave me an EpiPen. Still don't know what I was allergic to, 'cause even with insurance, getting allergy tested was way too expensive. Still is kinda too expensive. Still crawling out of medical debt now. Story 23 I hadn't eaten for days since I was so busy. For some odd reason I felt fine. I didn't feel drained of power or hungry, so it didn't cross my mind to at least take a tube of Pringles with me or a bottle of water. Was playing tennis with a friend and then everything went black. I had collapsed and woke up in a hospital. I got something to eat and I was fine afterwards. Never starve yourselves, guys. Story 24 I finally have one of these that I can answer. I have been a regular runner for 20 years. About 7 years ago I was doing a half marathon. I live in Florida and have my entire life, so I am used to the heat and the humidity here and have always been an active outdoor person. You can probably guess where this is going. For this half marathon the last mile goes along the park where the race finished. The last thing I remember is seeing the 12-mile sign. Half is 13. One for those who don't know. The next thing I remember I was in the ICU. I had gotten heat stroke with a body temperature around 106 or so. Luckily they got me to a hospital where they gave me ice baths and a ton of fluids. I had to stay for several days while my organ function returned to normal but have no lasting effects. P.S. I do have a photo of myself crossing the finish line despite not remembering anything past mile 12. Story 25 This was about 2 summers ago. My family has a total of 4 horses. Only 3 we can ride. Our biggest and oldest horse, Hope, is an ex-racehorse. For some time I had been taking lessons on her from my stepmom. Hope was not fully trained and could only be ridden at a walk trot. She also couldn't steer. Horses don't like wind, and it was really windy that day, leaving Hope a bit sensitive. When trying to get her into a trot, my stepmom had a whip and was just shaking it slightly. Hope jumped forward, so I instinctively held on with my legs. Bad idea. This caused her to freak out more. I was pulling back on the reins to try and get her to stop. When she finally came to a very harsh stop, I went off backwards. Not sure how, but I did, landed right on my head. Hope proceeded to back up and step on my back. I got a concussion. That was it. I could have easily been paralyzed or even killed. I don't remember seeing anything in a hospital, but I remember hearing things. The earliest thing I remember seeing was the window at a Walgreens pharmacy. Also, I don't remember most of that day. This is just from what my stepmom told me. I braided my horse's tail, Faith, earlier that day and had no memory. I even remember in the hospital bed my stepmom telling me I did it. I didn't know what day it was or anything. Over time some memory came back from it. Like I remember crawling out of the pen while gasping for air. Hope is a sweet horse. I should have been more careful that day. Story 26. Family friend went to sleep feeling fine. Next thing he sees is his parish priest standing over his hospital bed, performing the sacrament of the sick. Head had a seizure at 2 a.m. that woke up his wife, and when he didn't stop seizing she called 911. He didn't regain consciousness until the following afternoon, by which time they'd identified an inoperable brain tumor on his scans. He lived a few more months. Story 27. Used to have a hard drug problem with specifically uppers. Sober now, thank God. I never touched opiates. BC, it just wasn't my thing. Was trying to get a baggie of coke for me and my buds. Went through a different dealer than usual. There was a mix-up. We got a baggie of H. Mind you, I didn't do opiates. I was already drunk, and we were doing it in a dark car, so even though my buddy was concerned, BC, he knew it didn't look right. My addicted didn't care, snorted a huge line anyway. I remember getting out of the car and then waking up to them dragging my stretcher into a hospital. Took 2 shots of Narcan to my heart to get it started again. Had a slight concussion from falling out, hitting my head on the pavement. I'm really lucky to be here. Drugs, don't be like me, lol. For any recovering addicts, you can do this. It is possible, and I'm here if you need any help finding resources. Story 28. I wasn't feeling fine, but when I was a kid, at school during lunch I wasn't feeling well. I tried asking the lunch ladies to let me go through the halls to the office, but they wouldn't let me. While I was walking around I fainted and woke up in an ambulance. Story 29. I remember that when I was 16, at some point my head started to hurt very badly. Everyone closed their eyes and said, come on, everything will pass. Take a pill, everything will be fine, and at first it helped, but later the head I started to get sick many times stronger. Darkening in my eyes and dizziness added to this. It bothered me, but I kept taking pills, but when I fainted for the first time, I told my parents about it. My condition was stable. I stayed at home for a week and then I went to school. I sit in class and I feel a headache, so sharp that I just had time to get up and grab my head. I woke up already in the hospital. As it turned out I had an aneurysm ruptured, but I miraculously survived. The doctor said that there was only one such case a million. Is real. Now I'm 22, I'm fine, but still sometimes the situation triggers me and I wake up in a cold sweat. Story 30. Grand mal seizure killed me for no reason. Daughter's husband found me. Daughter did CPR until paramedics showed. Woke in hospital 2 days later and freaked the out. Spent 2 weeks in hospital recovering. Still don't know what caused it. Story 31. Passed out from severe dehydration and hit my head hard enough to give me a concussion. 1 minute expediting. Next minute hooked up to all sorts of machines. It was extremely disorienting. Story 32. When I was 7, my family and I had gone to a museum. For reasons beyond human comprehension, the museum had placed a large metal grate in the middle of a cylinder that went about 15 or so centimeters off the ground. Below the metal grate was a large steam-emitting machine about 10 meters below. I climbed up onto the metal grate and started running around with 5 or so other kids. And 10 seconds later, I slip and smash my skull on the metal grate. I think I passed out a few seconds later, and woke up in the hospital with a ton of bandages on my head. I had fallen directly onto my temple. For anyone not anatomically aware of what the temple is, it's the weakest area in the skull where 4 different bones connect to each other, and was lucky that I didn't crack my skull open, according to my father anyway. Story 33. Was having heart issues for almost a year. Looked like bradycardia, heart beating too slow, lots of tests. Put on meds. One day I was going to go to the kitchen and get a knife to start cutting up chicken for dinner, and then I come to on the floor, roommate yelling my name. She said I just dropped. Happened a couple more times in the next week. The last time it happened she said it looked like I was having a seizure, so she called 911. In the ER, get CAT scan, chest x-ray and ultrasound. All come back fine. After a couple hours laying in ER bed, a nurse comes in to chart my vitals and I start getting this huge head rush. I say oh, and she says oh my god and runs out of the room. She came back with like 6 or 7 people. Now shit's going crazy around me. They put these big contact pads for the shock paddles on me. Docs are yelling. Then it happened again and again. Pass out, pissed all over the floor. Doc comes in and tells me I'm getting a pacemaker in the morning. Turns out the fainting and head rushes were due to my heart rate just tanking. Would go from 80 to 90 BPM to 30. Spent 3 days in ICU and now home with a heart rate in the 70s. I had just wanted to go to sleep after the last fainting episode at home. Thankfully the roommate called 911 and didn't listen to me. If not for that and the fainting stuff happening in the ER, I'd be underground right now. Story 34. I had a major heart attack 9 years ago. I was awake up until the point where I flatlined in a hospital. I woke up a couple days later on a ventilator. Thankfully, I'm still here. Story 35 was learning how to play a dice game in county jail and couldn't really understand the math or rules. I remember people giving me weird looks that they had to keep explaining rules to me that were pretty simple. Figured I'd go sit down on my bunk. Woke up 3 days later handcuffed to a hospital bed. Turned out my kidneys were failing and I never noticed because I stayed high. If I hadn't gotten arrested, I would have kept using drugs and probably died from kidney failure. Story 36. I was living in my own apartment at 18, working full-time, in school full-time. I was sick, thought I had a cold. I worked the evening shift and didn't remember doing any of the work, but everything was done. I went home, slept and called my mother the next morning. She told me to go get some cold medicine, and it's a good thing she did. The last thing I remember was getting ready to walk to the store around the corner, and then I'm strapped to a bed, blind and freaking out. I had viral encephalitis. I was in a coma for a couple days and came very close to being dead. If I hadn't left my apartment I would be for sure. My mother saved my life. The doctors thought I had overdosed and my older sister had to convince them I was far too poor for drugs and that it was meningitis encephalitis. She had seen it before in people she worked with. She saved my life too. My family truly thought I was going to die. When I woke up my father asked if I knew where I was and I looked at the straps and said looks like the psych ward. My father started crying and said he's okay. Everyone assumed I'd have brain damage or be brain dead. But I was okay, except I lost my short-term memory for a while. To say I was lucky would be an understatement. Story 37. I got in a car with a drunk driver. 3 days later I woke up in the hospital with the doctors wiping some previously missed glass slivers off my back with baby wipes. It hurt. Apparently I was awake on and off and even gave the police a full interview, but I don't have the memory past getting in the car, and the baby wipes 3 days later. I guess we hit a curb and instead of tapping the brakes, his foot hit the gas. When he finally sorted out that he was pressing the wrong pedal he slammed on the brakes and we drifted into a set of concrete stairs going about 70, no airbags. I have one of those lucky to be alive stories according to most. Months later the damage to my carotid artery healed and the scar tissue essentially sealed it off. I had a stroke. Don't drink and drive. Wear your seatbelt. Story 38. I remember when I was maybe 6 years old I remember trying to get electrocuted, by spiting on my fingers and placing them on electric outlets. I got shocked and I remember saying to my dad, "Dad, what does 400V mean?" "It means 400 volts, son. It's enough to," and then I just fainted. I woke up in the hospital and that's my story. Story 39. Not in the hospital per se but on the floor in the nurse's office. I was in an animal healthcare class. I just been bitten by a guinea pig and was sent to see the nurse. All they did was run water on it. Next thing I remember, I was waking up on the ground. Funny because I remember dreaming too. Apparently, on my way down, my face hit the counter and my lower teeth ripped through my mouth. An ambulance took me to the hospital but I was okay. Come to find out, I had issues with my heart where my rate would suddenly drop. Story 40. When I was around 4 years old I played with this stray dog. She had so much trauma, and was always super nervous. As a 4-year-old I was pushing the dog way out of her comfort zone and caused her to freak out and bite me. It was a Sholine Border Collie with a set of very sharp teeth. Bit the tip of my left ring finger off, gave me a couple of small scratches. Went to the ER. I don't remember any of this really. My father took the dog in, went to a dog psychiatrist, and even to a behavior school with her. The reason they did this is because they didn't want me to have a fear of dogs, lol. My finger is fine, and I have a couple of scars to tell a great story. Story 41. 3 years ago I had a bad flu. Next thing I know I open my eyes alone in a semi-noisy hospital room, ventilated, arms tied to the bed and completely unable to move. I rolled my eyes across all I could see and thought, I used to be a physical therapist so I knew it was really bad. My family showed up, so happy to see my eyes open and me responsive. I was completely alert but baffled as to why I was there. Because of the ventilator, I couldn't speak, couldn't move. My son told me I had been in a coma for 9 days, near death. My bad flu, this is 6 months before COVID. Was it COVID? Lead to poor oxygen levels and I was intubated and put into a coma where they thought I would bounce back but didn't. All they could do was wait and test me for every possible thing including a lung biopsy. It all showed nothing. I spent 3 more days on the ventilator, so painful, kind of remembering how I got there, and from there I got better. They called me a medical masterpiece. I just knew that I had to get up even though I did not want to. After 3 total weeks, I walked out with a walker. A friend stayed with me a few days and then I was on my own. By the time school started in August, I was completely myself, if a little fatigued. 59F music teacher at the time. 3 years later, it's like it never happened. I was with my ex at the hospital in a meeting with her taking to the DR. I left to go to the toilet. I woke up on a hospital bed next door with bruises on my head. I fainted. Apparently I never have before, so it was weird. The appointment wasn't for me, it was for a procedure for my ex. Story 42. Came home from a first date, went to bed, woke up 2 or 3 days later in the hospital with a tube down my throat. Accidental overdose. I had known I had a problem, just didn't realize how much damage I had been doing to my body. Was in the hospital for 10 days, clean and sober ever since. Story 43. Well, I was riding a bike downhill and around 10 meters away there was a most of the time empty crossroad plus a van vast parked in corner blocking my vision. Eventually I said YOLO and let my brakes. Then, am gliding in hospital bed and lights of corridor passing by. At first I tried to sit but felt immense pain in my back, and first thing I said is WTF have I done? And then I learned that a car T-boned me going 60 km/h, had broke my clavicula, 2 ribs, arm, severe concussion to my hottie, had a giant bulge in back of my head, and my knee hurt really bad. People who saw the incident said I flew in air for 5 to 6 meters. I remember nothing from that time, but strangely after 2 years again some car hit me while he was crossing red light, and I remember when I saw the car about to hit me I said to myself again, and the whole scenario passed by mind in a second. So it was it. Yeah, I was a complete stupid for not looking when crossing and not having a helmet, but the car was over speeding too. Story 44 does a series of blackouts after a head injury count. Was just breaking in a young horse. Second time sitting on its back. Still don't know WTF actually happened that day. Suddenly I found myself crawling through the sand looking for something. It went dark again, and I found myself sitting on a bench far away from the paddock muttering I needed a doctor. Dark again, and next picture is me riding my bike through that little village up to their station to drive home. Dark again, and I found myself getting on the train, and this was the moment where I called my mom telling her to get me at the station and take me to the hospital. They kept me there for quite some time, but I don't remember anything about that time at all. Must have been sleeping or sedated most of it. Severe trauma was written down when they discharged me. Fun facts: I was wearing a helmet that was totally crushed. But from what the spectators of that scene, morons to let me drive away on my bike, told me, the horse had never touched me. There was only deep, dry sand, knock rocks, no branches, no fences, nothing that could have caused that kind of injury. Oh, I still own that horse. I ride him on a daily basis, but now I'm aware that he will always be spooky because he's, let's say, slow to thinking.